Here is the answer, right at the start, because you searched for it and you deserve it before the ad break, not after. To retire, most people need about 25 times the amount they spend in a single year. Not what they earn, what they spend. If you live on $40,000 a year, your number is roughly 1 million. If you live on 60,000, it's about 1.5 million. That's the whole formula. 25 times your annual spending. Everything else in this video exists to explain where that number comes from, why it works, the two places it quietly breaks, and the retirement mistakes that cost people years of their life without them ever noticing. But the headline is already yours, 25 times what you spend. Let's earn the rest of it. I'm Mr. Finance. Every week I take the money questions everyone repeats and put the actual arithmetic behind them. No hype, no shortcuts, just the numbers. If that's useful, subscribing takes one tap. Now, where does 25 times come from? 25 times your spending is the same statement as another rule you may have heard, the 4% rule. They are the same idea, wearing two outfits. If you can live on 4% of your savings each year, then your savings need to be 25 times your spending, because 4% times 25 equals 100% of 1 year. So the real question underneath the number is, why 4%? Why not 6? Why not 10? The answer comes from one of the most stress-tested studies in personal finance. Researchers took every 30-year window in modern U.S. market history, including the Great Depression, including the 1970s stagflation, including every crash on record, and asked a simple question. If a retiree pulled out 4% of their portfolio in year one, then adjusted that amount for inflation every year after, would they run out of money before 30 years was up? Right? In the overwhelming majority of those windows, the money didn't just survive. The retiree died with more than they started with. Because a portfolio that's still invested keeps earning while you spend from it. You're skimming the top while the base keeps compounding. 4% was chosen not because it's generous, but because it's the rate that survived even the worst starting years in recorded history. It's a floor built on disasters. That's why it's trustworthy. It was designed by people asking, what's the number that doesn't break in the depression? Not, what's the number that works when things go well? So when I tell you 25 times, understand what you're being handed, a figure that already assumes you might retire into the worst market of your lifetime. It has the bad years baked in. That's the honesty anchor of this entire topic. The rule is conservative on purpose. Here is the part almost nobody internalizes, and it is the single most powerful lever you have. Your retirement number has nothing to do with your salary. It's built entirely on your spending. Two people can earn the exact same $120,000 a year. If the first person spends $100,000 of it, their retirement number is $2.5 million. If the second person spends $50,000, their number is $1.25 million, half as much. Same income, half the finish line. This flips how retirement planning actually works. Most people think the path to retiring is earning more. Earning more helps you save faster, yes, but every dollar you learn to live without does two jobs at once. It's a dollar you can invest today, and it permanently lowers the total you'll ever need. A dollar of reduced spending is worth $25 off your target. Let me make that concrete, because it's the most valuable sentence in this video. If you can cut $200 a month from your lifestyle in a way you don't actually feel, $2,400 a year, you've just lowered your retirement number by $60,000. Not because you saved $60,000, because you'll never need to fund that spending, ever, for the rest of your life. That's why frugal people and high earners can arrive at the same finish line from completely different directions. The high earner sprints, the efficient spender moves the finish line closer, and the person who does both, earns well and keeps their spending sane, gets there embarrassingly fast. So step one of real retirement planning is not opening an account. It's knowing your actual annual spending, not your income, not your guess. The real number your life costs to run for 12 months. Multiply that by 25 and you're looking at your target. Everything after this is about how to reach it. Now the question you actually came for. How much do you have to put away each month to reach the number? The honest answer depends almost entirely on one thing: when you start. Not how smart you are, not what you invest in, when. Let me give you real figures, assuming a $1 million target and an 8% average annual return, which is roughly what a broad U.S. stock index has averaged over long periods before inflation. If you start at 25, you need to invest about $310 a month to reach $1 million by 65. $310. If you start at 35, that number jumps to about $670 a month. You waited 10 years, and the price roughly doubled. If you start at 45, it's about $1,700 a month. And if you wait until 55, reaching $1 million in 10 years takes roughly $5,500 a month, a number most people simply cannot hit. Look at what's happening. Every decade you wait doesn't add a little to the cost, it multiplies it. That's compound interest running in reverse. The early dollars had the most time to grow, so removing them hurts the most. The 25-year-old's $310 a month becomes $1 million, not because they invested more, they invested less total than the 45-year-old, but because their money had 40 years to double and double and double again. Here's the honesty anchor, because I won't pretend everyone can do this. If you're starting later, those monthly numbers are brutal, and I'm not going to insult you by suggesting they're easy. But two things are still true. First, later starters usually earn more than they did in their 20s, so a bigger monthly amount is more possible than it looks. Second, and this matters, a partial result is not a failure. Reaching $600,000 instead of $1 million doesn't mean you retire broke. It means you retire on a smaller number, possibly a little later, possibly with part-time income bridging the gap. The rule isn't pass-fail, it's a dial. The worst move is the one the math punishes hardest, waiting because the full number feels impossible. Starting with $50 a month at 30 beats, starting with the correct amount at 45. Time is the ingredient you cannot buy back later. Knowing the number is useless if the money sits in a checking account earning nothing. So here's the order that does the most work, in plain terms, and this is US specific because the accounts have names and rules that matter. First priority, if your employer offers a 401k match, take all of it before anything else. A match is your employer handing you free money, often 50 cents or a full dollar for every dollar you put in, up to a limit. That is an instant 50 to 100% return before the market does anything. No investment on earth reliably beats a guaranteed 100%. If you do nothing else in this video, capture the full match. Leaving it on the table is the most common expensive mistake in American retirement. People decline a raise they've already been offered. Second priority, a Roth IRA if you qualify. You put in money you've already paid taxes on, and then, this is the magic, it grows and comes out completely tax-free in retirement. Every dollar of growth, untaxed forever. For younger people especially, whose money has decades to compound, the tax-free growth of a Roth is one of the best deals the U.S. tax code offers an ordinary person. Third, go back and fill up the rest of your 401k beyond the match, up to the annual limit. This lowers your taxable income today. And fourth, once those tax-advantaged accounts are full, a regular taxable brokerage account. No special tax perks, but no limits and no restrictions on when you touch it, which matters if you want to retire before the traditional age. Now, what do you buy inside these accounts? For most people, the boring answer is the right one: a low-cost, broad-market index fund. One fund that owns a slice of hundreds or thousands of companies at once. You're not trying to pick winners. You're buying the whole market and letting the average, that roughly 8% long-run figure, do the work over decades. Low fees matter enormously here, and that's the next mistake most people never see. Let's name the retirement mistakes to avoid, because avoiding them is worth more than any clever move. Mistake 1, fees. A fund charging 1% a year instead of 0.1% sounds trivial. Over a full career, it can quietly eat a quarter of your final balance. On a portfolio that would have been $1 million, that's $250,000 handed to a fund company for doing nothing you couldn't do more cheaply. Check the expense ratio on everything you own. This is the most invisible, most expensive leak in the bucket. Mistake 2. Cashing out when you change jobs. Every time someone leaves a job and cashes out their 401k instead of rolling it over, they pay taxes, pay penalties, and worst of all, they murder decades of future compounding for a one-time check. That small balance you cashed out at 30 could have been a huge number at 65. Roll it over. Never cash it out. Mistake 3. Getting too conservative too early. People here move to safe investments as you age and slam the brakes at 40, parking everything in low-return accounts for 25 years. But at 40, you may have another 45 years of life to fund. Being too safe too soon means inflation quietly erodes your money while it fails to grow. Safety has its place near and during retirement, not decades before it. Mistake 4, the biggest one, never calculating the number at all. Most people navigate their entire financial life toward retirement without ever once multiplying their spending by 25. They save vaguely, hope loosely, and arrive unsure. You will not be that person because you now know your target is a specific, knowable figure, and a target you can name is a target you can actually hit. Before the summary, the question everyone types next: doesn't Social Security cover some of this? Yes, and here's the honest way to use it without lying to yourself. For most American workers, Social Security replaces roughly 30 to 40% of pre-retirement income, and less than that for higher earners. It's real money, and it lowers the size of the portfolio you personally have to build. If your spending is $50,000 a year, and Social Security is projected to cover $20,000 of it, then your portfolio only has to fund the remaining $30,000, which means your personal number drops from $1.25 million to about $750,000. That's a huge difference, and it's fair to count it. But 2 honesty anchors. First, don't count a benefit you haven't checked. Pull your actual estimate from your Social Security statement rather than guessing. Second, treat it as a floor, not the plan. The stronger your own portfolio, the less any future change to the program can shake your retirement. Use Social Security to shrink the target, never to skip building one. So here is retirement planning complete in one breath. Find what you actually spend in a year. Multiply it by 25. That's your number. Capture every dollar of employer match first, then a Roth, then the rest. Buy broad, low-cost index funds and leave them alone. Avoid the fee leak, never cash out early, and don't get scared into cash too soon. And above all, start now, because the price of this goes up every single year you wait, and it never comes back down. That's not a guru's secret. It's just arithmetic that most people were never shown. Now you've seen it. 25 times your spending. That's the whole finish line. The math that gets you there isn't complicated. It's just patient. A boring index fund, a consistent monthly amount, an early start, and decades of leaving it alone. That's how ordinary people with ordinary incomes end up with a portfolio that outlives them. I won't pretend the timeline is easy, and I won't hand you a fantasy number. What I'll promise is that the rule is honest. It already survived the worst markets in history before it ever reached you. Follow it, and the odds are genuinely, deeply on your side. I'm Mr. Finance. Subscribe if you want more of this. Real numbers, real timelines, no hype. And tell me in the comments, when you multiply your yearly spending by 25, what number do you get? And did it come out smaller or bigger than you feared? I read every one.